You're watching CoinDesk. This next interview is one of the highlights from Consensus 2025.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, no.
It's great to be here. I got the privileged position of moderating this panel with the standing room only. I'm pretty certain that's not because of who's moderating it. It's because I'm here with the men of the hour, Kevin, who's always the man of the hour, Dean Skurka, President, CEO of WonderFi, as you just heard. Huge news on Tuesday morning, I think it was. I'm losing track of time. Dean and Kevin, who's been involved with WonderFi for many years, and Bobby, who's here in the audience somewhere, have successfully navigated very turbulent waters in crypto generally, in Canadian crypto waters in particular, and found a great home for WonderFi in Robinhood. Congratulations to Robinhood and Johan, who may also be here in the audience as well. So anyway, it's really fun, and I'm excited to get the opportunity to ask these guys some questions about that deal, about the world at large, and we'll go ahead and dive right in. Dean, let me start with you. I'll give you a softball. Tell us about the deal. What did Robinhood see in this? The Americans are coming. How is this going to change Canadian crypto? What's the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, a really exciting week, an exciting announcement for us at WonderFi. You know, I think when they look at WonderFi, they see two of Canada's leading crypto trading platforms in BitBuy and CoinSquare. Both platforms have a long-standing track record of trust, transparency, and having a user-centric approach. And at the same time, we in Canada have a unique regulatory framework around digital assets and trading platforms, where we're fortunate to have a regulatory environment that allows platforms like us to be fully licensed. And so when you think about that setup, on top of the fact that Canada's adoption rates for digital assets continue to grow and are some of the highest globally, you know, when Robinhood and Robinhood Crypto look at areas in which they could grow geographically, Canada, for the right reasons, is likely near or at top of the list. And so when they look at Canada, the licenses we have, the registered users that we have, and the asset base that we have, you know, it's a really compelling opportunity to supercharge their efforts in the Canadian market. And for us, when we think about Robinhood, obviously one of the leading platforms globally, you know, that product is unbelievable. They have similar values, obviously very much focused on their users and providing a robust offering to them. You know, they obviously started with more traditional products and services, but they've grown a really big crypto business. And so when we think about the opportunity to come together and really supercharge what we're building in Canada, we're really excited by that opportunity.
Kevin, in my day job when I'm not amped up moderating awesome panels at Consensus with you, and it's great to see both of you again. They're long time friends both. I manage an exchange, and I've gotten to know Dean and actually got very interested in the WonderFi business over the last several years. And one of the reasons was that Canada, the country, had taken almost a role at the forefront of crypto regulation globally, but it seems like that's kind of slowed down. Is Canada risking kind of losing the plot a little bit in terms of regulation and getting engineers to stay home here for things like DeFi?
Well, you know, to be fair, Canada is hopefully emerging out of an economic coma that it's been in for the last decade. This is the wealthiest country on earth measured by proven reserves per capita, yet the country was run by a moron for a decade. And so, generally, I'm sorry, it's true. It's true. And I don't mean any disrespect, I just want to tell the truth. He was the idiot king. And so, what happened...
Something tells me there's going to be articles written about this panel.
I'm good with it. I'm good with it. So, generally, policy comes from the top, and you're seeing that happen in the US right now. The current administration is pushing down a mandate to explore the potential of crypto, and that you can feel the buzz in the room as part of the reason we're gathering here for that. And what I anticipate is going to happen is if you think about regulators, the OSC here in Canada and the SEC in the US, the ADGM, for example, I went with Dean to, I don't know, a few years ago to Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and we talked to the regulator there. They all talk to each other. They're in the circle of friendship. I've always thought that the SEC used the OSC as a petri dish to test ideas. For example, the first Bitcoin ETF in North America was here in Toronto, regulated by the OSC, and it was a successful outcome. And then they finally brought that mandate into the US. So I think this is good. I think what's going to happen is innovation will come back into Canada under new leadership. The new Carney is not an idiot, and so there may be a chance for him, because he's a financial services guy, to focus on this. I'm optimistic.
That's great. That's great. I'll give you a little bit of breaking news, Kevin and Dean, that I've heard in just the last 10 minutes or so. There is a new version of the Genius Act circulating in Washington that includes significantly greater, I'll call it, regulation on foreign issuers of stablecoins. I think Tether is the elephant in the room. It gets referred to as foreign issuers. I think these are Tether issues, as well as some additional limits on big tech. Meta being able to issue stablecoins, and there's a lot of optimism that, hey, maybe now's the time we'll see this stablecoin pass. It's not done yet, is what I'm hearing, notwithstanding the fact that there's another version of the bill. There's some people who think it might be done, sort of done as soon as today. I'm more of a skeptic, and I just want to explore the other side. You were talking about it in your 10 minutes, Kevin. Let's say nothing gets done. Let's say the stablecoin bill doesn't go through. It needs Democratic support. For those of you who aren't Americans, it needs kind of 60 votes in the Senate, which includes Democrats. And if they just band together, say no way, no how, pretty soon we're into budget season and tax season, and everybody's going to forget about this, and then we're into midterm season. What does crypto look like with no stablecoin bill in the US to bring clarity to this?
That would be bad. It'd be a bad outcome. And I don't think that's going to happen. I'm familiar with that bill from when it was brought as a Stablecoin Act under Gillibrand. I worked on it then. That was almost 4 years ago. Then she started working with Haggerty. He changed the name to the Genius Bill. He's been pushing very hard to get it through. We don't need 50 stablecoins. We just need a competitive market. The whole issue of stablecoins is auditability, transparency, and no security inside of that envelope more than 92 days in duration, because some people will use T-bills to back the asset. But I'm more optimistic, I must say, and I was talking to Dean about it just backstage. The potential, as we talked earlier about digital payment systems, are backed by this act. And what they're trying to do is stop Meta from doing its token. I understand that. And if they made it so that it had to be backed by the US dollar only, which I think that's what we're going to get to, that's okay too. I mean, the entire world trades on the transparency of the US dollar and commodities. I mean, what do you think, Dean?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not an expert like you guys on American politics, but I think the opportunity is certainly clear in terms of what it can mean for clear and concise regulation in the United States for crypto at large, and certainly stablecoins being front and center. I think you'd probably see a bit of a setback in market sentiment if things didn't progress, because obviously the current administration was quite vocal about pushing this agenda, and so to see that not happen, or not happen as quickly as people expected, certainly might put a bit of a damper on sentiment. But at the same time, this industry's continued to evolve and grow through unclear regulatory landscapes over the past decade, and so I think you'll still see innovation. You'll still see a push towards decentralized applications. You'll still see platforms like ours continuing to grow in different ways, but ultimately, for this industry to continue to grow meaningfully over the long period of time, these acts will need to get passed in some capacity.
Dean, we've had many sort of deep conversations, and they always just come back to business, and you're a real business nerd. Nothing gets you more excited than talking about users and margins, until I sat with you 2 nights ago, and you told me about your daughter, and I realized, no, there is something that gets him even more excited than user counts. And so on the walk here this morning, I was thinking to myself, geez, his daughter's 12 months old. What a year this guy's had. He's had a beautiful baby girl 12 months ago. He's sold this jewel of a business that he built through hard work to a great institution, Robinhood, and some interesting other things along the way. What has this year meant for you in terms of, I don't know, just perspective on life?
Yeah, no, definitely have gained a lot of perspective this year. I think it's all part of the journey, honestly. We think about building this business in early 2018 when, our investors, could care less about us, and, the industry at large seemed like it was unraveling and potentially, at the end of the road, and just the perseverance we had as a business to keep going, keep building, keep growing, user by user, as you like to say, and keep focusing on features and just improving the platform, putting ourselves in positions where we can acquire technology to supercharge that, putting ourselves in a position where if the market comes back, we're in a really good spot in Canada and we can be really competitive. And then, of course, just continuing through the journey, being able to be acquired by WonderFi and Kevin. So I think, just stay level-headed and just continue to move forward and good things happen. And, we always had a really good outlook on the business, and I think that sort of carried through, through the last year. And obviously, through all of the ups and downs we had as a business, or, maybe as things get a little more interesting on a personal level, moments like this week obviously just make it all worthwhile and put things into perspective. And, we're really happy with this week's outcome, and obviously in light of what's happened, it's obviously a little bit extra special for sure.
Notice how his answer went immediately into business nerd mode. He loves it. He loves it. I wanted some more baby girl stories like I got the other night. So Kevin, smooth transition from 12-month-old baby girls to China trade. I'm a policy nerd, and I don't know what the hell's going on. What's going on?
So, the tariff thing, Canada's obviously involved in this as well. China's not the same as the other tariff issues. It's in a different stack because China joined the WTO in the year 2000 and has never abided by the covenants they agreed to, not even 1 week, not the first week. And there's been no mechanism by which to resolve trade disputes, particularly around IP theft. And I have been subject to that now for almost 20 years in doing business with them. They cheat, they steal. Generally, the model is any product or service that hits 5 million in sales in the domestic market, whether it's in France or Germany or in the United States or Canada, is knocked off in China and introduced into that local market at a 40, sometimes 50% discount because they have no cost of R&D to recoup. And so there's no way to resolve that dispute. You can't litigate, you can't do anything about it. So I think this administration is putting all that into the negotiation with China, starting with tariffs. And Geneva last week was interesting. The situation now is 10-10 reciprocal, plus a 20% surcharge on goods coming from China into the US on a fentanyl penalty. So it's 30% all in. But that's just one aspect. By the time this is over, they're going to resolve IP theft, resolution and access to legal markets in China, either delisting, as you're well aware of a guy that worked in the exchanges, all those Chinese companies that have golden shares or have super prefs or do not comply by GAAP. That's about $800 billion worth of market cap. They could turn that off. TikTok, another situation that's going to get resolved. So I'm pretty optimistic, and this will all happen for the end of the year because Trump can't afford to get too close to the midterms without this stuff resolved, because he doesn't want to lose his majority mandate. So a lot of stuff happening, a lot of volatility, and in the end, the tariffs are being reciprocal. The U.S. is the only country on earth that's significant that doesn't have a value-added tax, a consumption tax, and you can't get Congress to pass that, so Trump did it in a backdoor way. That 10% reciprocal tariff is basically a VAT tax. It's a consumption tax in the U.S., and that's what it's going to be, I think.
Dean, I've been here for this week, and the vibes are good, as my daughters would say. I haven't sensed an anti-American bias like I have in other countries at other times. What's the word on the street?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a moment in time where this was, a hot topic. I think it's cooled down. I think there's always this, natural affinity for American products and American culture in Canada. And, I think there might have been a moment, albeit quite brief, where people were a little bit riled up by these tariffs. But I think it's passed. I think Carney's shown he can bridge the gap and find a resolution there. And I think ultimately, like I said, Canada is obviously a much smaller market and takes the lead in many respects from the U.S. And I wouldn't expect that to change. So I think, the relationship might have had some strain, albeit it felt like a very short period of time. You don't really hear a lot about it anymore. There's maybe a 2 to 3 week window where everybody was ultra excited by what was going on and up in arms by what Mr. Trump was proposing. But I don't think it's something that's really carried forward. I think the election sort of changed the narrative a bit, and you're starting to see the conversation and the relationship stabilize.
Maybe a few dirty looks late last night from people wearing Maple Leafs jerseys, I noticed. But
well, if you wear a Panthers jersey in Toronto, I can't help but, that outside of that,
So I'm basically rattling through all the questions I wanted to ask these guys. It's a privilege to get to ask them questions. And so, again, just another abrupt transition. Kevin, I think I know you well enough to know, well, let me take a step back. I'm interviewing Dave Portnoy on stage tomorrow. And part of why I'm excited about that is I'm like granddad. I don't get fart coins and jail stool coins and all this stuff. And I truly want to know more. I want to know more about the psyche and the zeitgeist. My guess is you're more a show me a real business guy as you evaluate coins and tokens. What are you excited about in terms of value appreciation in crypto?
Well, I look at crypto like any other sector of the economy. There's always going to be the speculative venture capital, and that these tokens and coins and meme coins you're talking about, they're more speculative, they're more like a startup, and you can take a bet on them, and you just don't know what the outcome's going to be. And sometimes they're whimsical, but there's a place for them in the continuum of the market. The majority of institutional capital waiting on the wings primarily is interested in Bitcoin. And if you ask a large institution after it's designated a commodity or a security, they're going to put on a 1.5% weighting, and they're going to start with Bitcoin. Now, what happens to the level twos and everything else? I mean, I'm a big shareholder in HBAR. I'm optimistic about the volatility is crazy in the price, but I own a bunch of positions, Avalanche, ETH, like everybody else. But that's just diversification. But really, I think what will happen when the regulatory environment is clear and we have designation to security over commodity, the volume of capital that will come into the top 5 tokens is going to be, it's going to be like a vortex sucking cash out of the crap at the bottom. And because many people will now want to own, whatever it is, a Bitcoin they want or ETH or whatever. And there'll be a distillation, a reduction in, it's like dialysis. If you go in and get dialysis, the treatment in Dubai I just had last week called EBU, and you have 5 liters of blood in your body. They don't allow this in North America, but they're so far advanced over there. You go through the dialysis, and it takes out of your blood all the crap and the plastics and the waste, and you can see it coming out, and then they oxygenate your blood, and then they ozonate it, and then they inject it with 50 billion exosomes. And you walk out.
Sorry, you had this done last week?
2 days ago.
No wonder, you look terrific.
I feel like $1 million bucks. I mean, it's the most remarkable procedure I've ever had. It's not available here. And you feel like a teenager when you walk out, and I have no pain. All the inflammation goes away from the exosomes.
Do you have an investment in this company?
I'm trying to.
I feel like I'm being sold here.
I'm trying to. But it's called Lifespan. Anybody gets over there. It's not an inexpensive procedure, but it's worth every cent. The point is, when we regulate Bitcoin, it'll be like an EBU to all that crap in the system. It'll all get sucked out. So if you have a shitcoin, it's probably going to go down in value, not up in value. It'll be a reverse relationship. So you should be careful with your portfolio. Get rid of all that garbage before they pass legislation.
Thank you, and the metaphor is apt. You rattled off a few, but just to drill in again, in your mind, you referred to top 5. What might those top 5 end up being 2-3 years from now?
Well, Bitcoin is different because there's no use case for it except you believe that it's a storage of value. But the level 2s, and HBAR, for example, there's a corporate use of that product. That's harnessing the blockchain for supply-side management. And I'm a believer in that. That's a functional use. A stable coin is a digital payment system, stable use. So the risk you have is if you're buying a coin because you perceive it has value, but it doesn't actually have a use case, it better be Bitcoin, because everything else that doesn't have a use case has no value.
Yeah. Dean, just more on that. I think would all stipulate, and probably most of we would all stipulate, that Bitcoin is fabulous and here to stay and just a part of the economic fabric of the globe. Ditto stablecoins, not in the same way, not to the maturation, to the extent in terms of maturation as Bitcoin, but stablecoins have gone from 5 billion to around about 200 billion in the last 5 years. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see them go to 2-3 trillion in the next 5 years. I love stablecoins. Just as an aside, I love stablecoins. I was talking to a great CEO last night of a company called Yellow Card that's making it possible for people in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, to get their hands on US dollar stablecoins, which aren't inflating 100%. Just a real world use case that's really helpful for a wide swath of the globe. I love that stuff. But what else? Like, what else is there that you look out and you say, geez, this could be life-changing? And I know this is a hard question. I mean, it's part of a new asset class, hard to answer, and so I'm putting you on the spot. But are there one or two use cases that you get excited about, other than just speculation or Bitcoin or stablecoins, where you say, yep, I'll be on the stage 5 years from now, and we'll be talking about this or that?
Yeah, I think it's tough to say one or two things in particular, but I think when you look generally at the industry at large, on-chain activity is probably, an area to focus on outside of Bitcoin and stablecoins, obviously, which garner quite a bit of the attention, certainly lately. And so when you think about everything we're looking to build as an industry of decentralized applications, where are those developers building and where are those users finding traction today? And certainly Ethereum was the original platform for a lot of this activity. I remember early days, my first experiences on chain were through Ethereum protocols. You think about where we are today in this moment in time, Solana's really gained a lot of momentum there and is bringing people on chain that you would have never expected to be transacting on chain 2 or 3 years ago. And so you think about that trend over the next 2 to 5 years as user experience improves and the friction is mitigated in terms of just seamlessly getting on chain, getting your assets on chain, and being able to understand how to navigate some of these protocols. So I think obviously Solana's had a great run, but I think when you look at the user activity and everything that's being developed on there, I think that story continues to play out meaningfully over the next few years. And outside of that, there's a lot of people competing for similar mind share and similar I guess dollars just in terms of on-chain activity. So I think there's opportunity for more than one player in that segment, but it's all about where the users are and having really good products and having that activity on chain. And so I don't think there's really anyone that's quite done it the way Solana has so far, but I certainly would see some of these competitors starting to improve that in the coming years as well.
Thanks, Dean. And we're running low on time. One of the things I've loved as I've walked around, I've seen a lot of young people in the audience, including in the front row right here. And Kevin, we're here in Toronto. You are famous, you are successful, you have clean blood. Let's just end it. I'm a 25-year-old in this audience, and I too want to be successful and have a track record for being honest and ethical, and I have integrity. And how do I do it? What advice do you have for those folks in the audience?
I think if I were starting out again today, I would focus on AI and the adoption of it into various verticals. But in order to use it, many people think it's easy. It's not. There's going to be billions of dollars made in training corporate clients on how to adopt AI into their verticals. And I think that's going to be a very, very big business. And that's what I'm planning to invest in. And I want to end with something that just hit me when we were talking about what happens when things get regulated. A few years ago at this conference, we were talking about NFTs. They're now shitcoins. So it didn't have any...
And not stablecoins. It wasn't even a...
No, the point was
really.
They never had a use case. It never adopted a reason to exist, and now they're basically worthless. So that's a warning of caution to everybody. Just focus on driving this industry towards good outcomes on use cases where there's economic benefit occurring. And so, and you started with talking about exchanges. They are the picks and shovels of this industry. Most people made money not finding gold 200 years ago, selling jeans, picks, and shovels. And I think owning exchanges, and I own them all, including WonderFi and Robinhood and Coinbase, it doesn't matter what the price of Bitcoin is. They make money every day. That's what I love about them. Up and down, still making money.
Well, these two titans of industry in Canada, and certainly leaders in crypto, making moves, just sold to Robinhood. Please give an extra warm thank you to these two with a great panel.
Thanks a lot.